Hi, I'm glad you're here. When I first conceived of this channel, I had two main projects that I wanted to include. One of them is a course where you would basically identify one area in your life that you want to implement change, and then together we would work through the 7 stages of traditional alchemy to help manifest it and bring it about. The other was this right here, the alchemy of loss. Initially, I thought it would be structured like the alchemy course, but I quickly realized that that's just not possible to do in this case. Um, the reason is for the alchemy course, you really do have a roadmap. You start at point A, you go through the 7 steps sequentially until you get to the final step, point A to point B. I believe I may have said this in my last video, but grief isn't like that. There's no roadmap for grief. If you tried to chart it, it would, rather than looking like a straight line, it would just be this tangled snarl of lines that looks more like a ball of yarn after a kitten's got finished playing with it rather than any type of map. And that actually brings us to the topic of conversation today. If you've been through grief, you've probably heard some of this. You'll get over it. It's been long enough. They'd want you to be happy. Now, these things are usually said out of discomfort more than cruelty, because the capital T truth here is society doesn't know what to do with grief that lasts. Prime example of this, if you'd seen my previous grief video, you'll know that starting when I was 16 years old, that I lost about 12 members of my family in quick succession in a matter of 2 years. And I briefly mentioned in it that I did not handle that well, to say the least. Part of the reason I didn't handle it well is because I am an introvert by nature. And I've never had many friends in my life. I've never had many people to talk to. It's just the way I am. I usually have one friend at a time. I'm a hermit. And so on top of that, I was also told at one of the funerals that I had to be strong for my mom. And when I was at my aunt and uncle and my 3 cousins' funeral, I was crying. And another one of my aunts came up to me and told me that I had to stop, that if my grandmother saw me crying like that, that it would just break her heart. Part of that is the time and area I grew up in. I mean, really dealing with mental health issues didn't really start becoming a real thing until maybe the 90s, the early 2000s. On top of that, I grew up in a very rural area of West Virginia where men just were not expected to show feelings. So I learned how to push it all down inside. The problem is when you push it all down inside, it still needs to come out somewhere. At the time, I was a roommate with the woman who would eventually become my first wife. And one day, we were just kind of hanging out, and my best friend, who was also a mutual friend at the time, stopped by. And I can't remember what it was, but something triggered me, and I started crying and talking to them, because they were the only people I had to talk to about this. I didn't even consider therapy back then. That just that didn't seem like an option. Only crazy people went to therapy. So I started talking to them about this. This was years after I was still dealing with the fallout, and it emotionally exhausted me. So I fell asleep on the couch. I don't think I was asleep long, but I woke up at one point, and they were in the adjacent room, and they were talking softly, but I could still make out clearly what they were saying. And they obviously thought I was still sleeping there on the couch. And I heard one of them say, "Oh my God, can you believe he's still going on about this?" And the other one said, "I know, he just needs to get over it." And their tone of exasperation was just so much that I felt like a burden. And so I pretended to go back to sleep, and like waited a fair amount of time until their conversation was over, until I pretended to wake up. I never addressed it with them, but that did teach me that okay, push it down even further, because obviously there's something wrong with me, and like my friends are sick of hearing about it. There's a problem with me, is what I thought. The truth is that grief makes people uneasy. There's many reasons for this. It disrupts productivity. It's resistant to timelines. It can't be neatly resolved. But I think one of the biggest ones is that it reminds others of their own mortality and vulnerabilities. We also live in a culture that worships forward momentum, and in a culture like that, there's no real language for love that outlives its object. So grief becomes a problem only because it refuses to disappear. Now, the capital T truth is that there's no moment, no single defining moment where grief is so, completed. There's no version of healing where, the loss and the feelings never resurface. I think I said this in the last video as well. Time does not heal all wounds. It doesn't erase your pain. All it really does is change the texture of it. So another capital T truth is you don't get over a loss. You just get better at carrying it. Now, I mean, no one ever will really say directly to your face that your grief has overstayed its welcome. For example, like my roommate and friend, they never mentioned it to me directly. If I hadn't have heard them talking, I never would have known they felt that way. Well, I probably would have eventually, because there are some ways that you feel it, as I would learn going on through life. You can feel it in the awkward pauses, maybe when you mention your loved one's name, and there can be these long pauses, and maybe people shifting their gaze back and forth to one another. It's also in the way that people eventually stop asking, how you're holding up, how you're doing. Even if you don't consciously notice these things, I think it registers unconsciously, because a lot of times you will actually start editing yourself before you speak, so you can avoid making these people uncomfortable. So let's see, some of the other really subtle social cues that let you know when people think that your grief is overstayed is they'll acknowledge it only in past tense. That's a pet peeve of mine. Not just the grief, but the love. I noticed when my wife Sarah died that almost immediately, within days, people started saying, "I know how much you loved her." And love doesn't die. Just because the person's gone, your love doesn't die with it. There's a song by a band I really like called the Ravenettes, and that's the band, not the song. But there's a line in it that says, I'm probably misquoting this because it's been a while since I listened to it, but it's, when the sun dies, do we die too? And that's the way I see love is, Sarah had passed, yes, but my love for her didn't change. I still loved her. If you hear this background noise, I don't know how well my noise cancellation does with this. I think I mentioned in another video, I live on a highway, so sometimes there's big trucks. So if you hear like a rumbling in the background, I apologize. And that little aside was because I did hear a big truck and it derailed my line of thinking. I think I was rambling anyway. Yeah, I was talking about how people will acknowledge the loss only in past tense. Another one is they might quickly change the subject. And of course, again, there's that uncomfortable silence when you mention their name that I mentioned earlier. I'm repeating myself now. But what it all boils down to, I think, is that society tends to treat grief as a contaminant almost. But alchemy treats it as an ingredient. And it doesn't transmute by being rushed. It transmutes by being allowed to stay. Circling back to the story of my roommate and my best friend, as I mentioned at the beginning, I pushed all that down. I let it fester inside me without any type of resolution. But like putting your finger over a Coke bottle and vigorously shaking, the pressure, eventually builds up enough that it has to go somewhere, and it'll blow your thumb right off the top. And that's what happened in this case. Maybe not quite as dramatic. I'm not proud of this. I understand why I did it. It's definitely not something I'm proud of because, honestly, it was morally reprehensible, I feel. But I do understand the reasonings why. After a while, I was no longer roommates with Farrell, and Earl was busy, so I wasn't seeing him as much. So there was a period of time where the three of us really didn't have much interaction. When we all started hanging out again, when we got back to life as normal, I invented a story that in the time that had passed, that I had been seeing a woman, and that we had had a child together, and that the child had passed away from SIDS. It's a horrible, horrible thing, horrible story. Like I said, I apologized to my first wife years later and explained to her why, because I put a lot of thought into the why. And the why is because I had all that pushed down inside me, and it needed some sort of outlet. So by inventing that story, it allowed me to talk to them about my feelings again, without them feeling like I was still stuck, so to speak. Like I said, I'm not proud of that. I understand why I'm not proud of it. But, that's the type of thing that can happen if we don't acknowledge our loss. Basically, what we refuse to sit with, we eventually become ruled by. But if we sit beside it, we learn to live with it. Yeah. So got off into a emotional headspace there, so I'm going to bring it back around to the episode. We're going to go right into the ritual. The ritual this time around is one that's designed to reject the expectation of getting over it, and to affirm that grief is a continuing relationship that is actually rooted in love. For this, you'll need 2 chairs, a small object representing the person, or you can also go with a more abstract. You can just represent the loss if you're more comfortable with that. You will also need a piece of cloth or a scarf, and a quiet room. To begin with, you'll want to place the chairs facing one another, and you will sit in one, but on the other chair, place that object and drape the cloth very loosely over it. And as you do that, say something along the lines of, this space is not for closure, this space is for truth. I also don't like the word closure, but that's beside the point. So once that has been done, then like speaking aloud, you'll name what's been placed upon you, making sure to pause after each. This could sound something like, I've been told it's time to move on. People have told me time should fix this. It's been implied that my grief has an expiration date. You don't have to use those, of course. Those were just examples. But once you have your list, and it's okay to keep it to a short list. But once you have that list, then you say aloud, none of these were spoken by grief itself. And then you'll turn toward the empty chair and you'll say something along the lines of, this loss didn't end a relationship, it only changed its form. Then I just want you to sit quietly and take 3 slow, deep breaths. If any types of emotions come and arises, just let it. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Just trust the ritual anyway. After that, you'll place your hand over your chest and you'll say, I decide how my grief lives within me. I don't measure love by how quickly it disappears, and there is no deadline on remembrance. This is basically a central act of resistance against a society that tries to force you to move on. Once you've said that, you'll fold the cloth neatly and place it somewhere visible afterwards. It could be a bedside table, a shelf, just somewhere visible that you'll see it several times a day. As you place it there, say something along the lines of, this relationship continues in its own way, and I do not need permission for that. And then you'll end simply by just standing up. There's no candles to extinguish, no symbolic sealing. The symbolism here is that as much as we may hate it, life continues. And grief doesn't end because enough time has passed. It changes because you change. There's no finish line where love disappears, no moment where remembering becomes a failure of healing. If your grief is still there, it's not because you're stuck. It's because that bond that you shared and that love truly and really mattered. So if the world around you has gone quiet around your loss, just let this be a reminder that you're not behind. You're not doing it wrong. You're living with something real. And that too is part of the great work. So until next time, be kind to yourself. And as always, walk in peace and light, my friend.